Okay, well, just like Jason said, I'm Stacy Rendell, Retirement Systems. I work in education and outreach. So what we do is we come out and we educate folks about retirement. So thank you for having me and give me a chance to talk to you a little bit about the PSERS transition here. So as a lot of you are aware, this is House Bill 1055 that did open up the definition of PSERS to also include those who work in sort of 911 telecommunicating type positions. So to be more specific, I have to kind of read through this here. To be more specific, people that are eligible, it's those that are primary responsibility is to receive and process, transmit or dispatch 911 emergency and non-emergency calls for law enforcement, firefighter, emergency medical and other public safety services, or those who supervise those employees that are now eligible to participate in PSERS. It's a little specific definition there. So let's start off with first, what's the difference between PERS and PSERS? Because really, when it comes down to it, the main difference between PERS, specifically PERS 2 and PSERS, is eligibility. But let's go ahead and talk about all of this here. So for PERS Plan 2, and all plans, PERS 2, PERS 3, PSERS, they all provide for two eligibility criteria, two kinds of eligibility. So you have what we call normal retirement or full retirement, which means you can retire with a full pension benefit. And then we have early retirement, which means under normal retirement age with a reduced benefit in most cases. So for PERS Plan 2, normal retirement or full retirement with a full benefit is age 65 once you have achieved 5 years of service credit. And that's what we call vesting. So once you've achieved 5 years of service credit, you're vested or guaranteed a benefit when you turn age 65. Now, PERS 2 also provides for an early retirement. You could retire as early as age 55, so between 55 and 64, with a reduced benefit. And it's reduced to help pay for the cost of receiving it over a longer period of time. And to be eligible for an early retirement in PERS 2, you need to achieve 20 years of service credit. So 5 years for a normal retirement, 20 years for an early retirement with a reduced benefit. PERS Plan 3, very similar. Normal retirement is 65 once you've achieved 10 years of service credit. So you do need to have 10 years in to be vested for a normal retirement in PERS 3 at age 65, with one exception. You could retire with 5 years of service credit in Plan 3 if you achieve at least 1 year or 12 months over the age of 44. And that was put in there to help people who are hired later in life to help them vest faster. And PERS 3 also provides for an early retirement, again, between the ages of 55 and 64, once you achieve 10 years of service credit. So it's 20 years in PERS, 20 years in PSERS for early retirement. And we'll talk about PSERS here in a second, but 10 years for PERS 3 for an early retirement to be eligible. The same thing, it's a reduced benefit, and the further away you are from 65, the bigger the reduction. So let's look at those reductions, what we call the early retirement factor table. So in PERS 2 or PERS 3, if you retire early with less than 30 years of service credit, your benefit would be actuarially reduced based upon your age. We actually apply actuarial factors to that benefit amount, and it's a permanent reduction. Now, if you achieve at least 30 or more years of service credit, you get at least 30 years in, the reduction factors are more favorable. In fact, if you joined PERS 2 or PERS 3 prior to May of 2013, you're eligible for what we call the 2008 factors. That means you could actually retire with an unreduced benefit between the ages of 62 and 64, no reduction. So again, if you joined PERS 2 or PERS 3 prior to May of 2013, you achieved 30 years, you could retire as early as age 62 with no reduction to your benefit. Now, if you joined PERS on or after May of 2013, and you want to retire early, they're still more favorable, but it's still going to be a reduction. It would be a 5% reduction for every year that you're away from the age of 65. Again, if you join PERS on or after May of 2013, you retire early, get your 10 or 20 years in, or I should say 30 years in, it's a 5% reduction for every year that you're under the age of 65. Any questions on PERS eligibility? Yes.
The 30 years of service credit.
Mhm.
If you joined PERS and then went into PERS 3 or whatever, does that date still apply?
Yeah, this still applies if you transfer to Plan 3. It still goes by that because that's when you join PERS specifically. So,
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about eligibility for PSERS, public safety employees. So we have a couple of categories here for a normal retirement. So folks in PSERS could retire at 65 with 5 years of service credit, or they could retire at age 60, so between 60 and 64, if they achieve at least 10 years of service credit. And all 10 years have to be earned in PSERS. It can't be a combination of PERS and PSERS time. With one exception, which we'll talk about here in a second. There's exceptions to so many things. But normally, yes, you have to have 10 years in PSERS to be eligible for a normal retirement at age 60. Now, PSERS also provides for an early retirement. You could retire as early as age 53. Now, remember, it's 55 in PERS, it's 53 in PSERS. So you could retire as early as age 53, again, with a reduced benefit. To be eligible for an early retirement in PSERS, you do need to achieve 20 years of service credit. And if you do retire early, it's a 3% reduction for every year that you're under the age of 60. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, if you have 20 years in and you turn 60, even if it's a combination of PERS and PSERS time, which we'll talk about dual membership here in a second, but even if it's a combination of PERS and PSERS time, as long as it totals 20 years, you can retire with a full benefit in PSERS at age 60. That's the exception. This is where it gets a little complicated, I know. So you get 10 years in PSERS. Normally, all 10 years have to be earned in PSERS, right? To get at the full benefit at 60. But if you have a combination of PERS and PSERS time that totals 20 years, you could retire with a full benefit in PSERS, even if you have less than 10 years in PSERS at age 60.
So there's seems like there's been some discussion about converting from PERS to PSERS. You're not converting your PERS time over PSERS, you're just starting the clock on the new system.
You got it. But I'm going to talk about dual membership that I think will help to clarify some of that. But you're right, you're not actually transferring from one to the other. You're going to stay as members in both plans. Just one will be inactive and one's going to be active. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about eligibility. Now let's talk about how the benefit is calculated. And really, when it comes to the benefit formula, it's the same for PERS 2 and PSERS 2. Formula is the same. We use a 2% multiplier times your service credit years times an average of your pay to get to your monthly benefit amount. And so for PERS and PSERS Plan 2, the longer you work and the more that you earn, the higher your benefit's going to be when you retire. Same for both. Same for both. For Plan 3, PERS Plan 3, we use a 1% factor, but the calculation of average pay and service credit year is the same for PERS and PSERS. It's just we use a 1% factor. And that's because Plan 3 folks also have an investment account that they're funding. The employer funds the pension part of Plan 3, and the employee, the Plan 3 member, funds the investment part of Plan 3. So we use a 1% factor, but outside of that, formula is the same. Now, to be a little bit more specific on the earning of service credit and average of pay, for all plans, PERS 2, 3 PCERS, you earn credit based upon the amount of hours you're paid for each month. As long as you're paid for 90 or more hours per month, you're in a full service credit month. If you're paid for less than 90 hours, you might be earning half a credit or a partial service credit month. But 90 is key to get full credit towards your pension. And that's for all the plans. Now, as far as the calculation of average pay, it's going to be a monthly average, and again, for all plans, monthly average of your highest 60 consecutive service credit months of pay or 5 years, wherever they happen to be in your career in public service. So while most people earn their highest average 5 years in their last 5 years, which is why it's called average final compensation, but it's not really true for everybody. So it really can be any consecutive 5-year period in your career, no matter where they're at in your career, and then taking an average of that. And we do take an average of your gross income before deductions. So any questions about the calculation of your benefit?
There's no cap on the.
Correct.
31 is, I thought it used to stop at 60.
So that was for plan 1, but there's no cap for 2 or 3. There never has been a cap for 2 or 3. You know, it's funny because I was in the past, I've always kind of joked about, you know, I had somebody attending at a presentation that told me they're planning to work until they want to get 51 years and to see if they can get 102% of their pay. And I was like, you go for it. Good for you. I'm not going to be here, but good for you. But I actually found out recently that I had an employer tell me that they do have an employee that hit 51 years. And I thought, wow, okay, now I really have a true example of that. So yeah, there's no cap on service credit. And in case you're wondering what I mean by lifetime, again, a lifetime benefit payment, you can't outlive it. What do I mean by that? Do you know that our oldest living retiree, the last time I checked anyway, is 106 years old and still receiving a pension benefit? So again, lifetime, cannot outlive it. All right, now let's talk about dates here. So for those who have currently established membership in PERS, eligible for PCERS full-time, they can choose to transfer from PERS to PCERS, not actually transfer all their time, but just stop membership in PERS, become a member in PCERS. They can make that choice between June 1st of this year up until September 1st of this year. That's when they'll have that choice to join PCERS. So again, PERS becomes inactive if they choose to, and then PCERS becomes their active plan. 20 years
20 years total.
at age 60.
Just,
The minimum is 20. Otherwise it's 10 years at 60, 5 years at 65, or 20 years for early retirement, or a combination of 20 years for normal retirement at 60. So it's always going to be a minimum there. Yeah. And I'm going to take you through a dual membership example, but you're going to see that. So yeah, so stay tuned. Let me come up to that. And so that's current employees that have already established membership in PERS. They're in an eligible PCERS position or will be soon, but have this choice to make. And there's going to be an election form for them to complete to make that choice. And we don't have the forms ready yet. They're still working on them. It's supposed to come out hopefully sometime this month. But there's going to be a form for them to complete to make that election. All right, for new employees, those are hired into a PCERS eligible position. Anyone hired June 1st or later automatically becomes a PCERS member. Doesn't matter if they're already in PERS or not. they're going to join PCERS as of June 1st of this year. Now let's go through some frequently asked questions, starting with, what happens if a PERS Plan 2 or 3 member does not transfer or does not want to transfer to PCERS? Those who do not complete the form and make that election during that window, they're going to stay in PERS. They'll stay in PERS 2 or PERS 3 if they don't make the election, or if they miss the deadline, the end of the window deadline. They're going to stay in PERS. However, if they change employers and go to work for another employer in a PERS eligible position, they will join PERS with that new employer. I'm sorry, PCERS. I'm doing a lot of back and forth here. Yeah, sorry. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Yes, PCERS, they will, if they're hired into a PCERS eligible position, they will join PCERS with a new employer.
What if it's the same employer and they promote?
Well, again, the position has to be PCERS eligible.
Right.
If they promote into, say, a supervisor where they're going to supervise PCERS folks, then they will still be in PCERS.
Oh, even if it's the same employer, because they're not changing.
Yeah, because it's still the same employer. And remember, eligibility is I kind of went through those requirements, or if somebody who directly supervises people that do those requirements. So they say they promoted to a supervisor that directly supervises, they're still going to be in PCERS. But if they promote or move to a position that's PERS eligible, not PCERS eligible, even if it's the same employer, they're going to go into PERS, not PCERS. Even if it's the same employer.
But if they elect PERS and they
Okay,
select to stay in PERS
gotcha.
and they promote to a supervisory position that is eligible for PCERS, but it's the same employer. They're not changing employer.
Yeah, it'll still be PERS.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, they'll still be PERS. The same employer, but if they go to a different employer, and I think I have that as another question coming up here, but that would be the correct, yeah.
I just needed to clarify something. So we have telecommunicators, they have supervisors, they're eligible. I have like my ops manager and deputy operations manager that actually supervise the supervisors. Are they eligible or no?
Probably not.
Okay.
You have to directly supervise those that are in PCERS.
Okay.
So once they kind of become removed, like the next level removed and the next level above that's removed, would not be eligible for PCERS. Yeah.
But if your first level supervisors are actually performing as telecommunicators like mine do, then I would suspect that whoever's supervising my supervisors who supervise my telecommunicators is still going to be eligible because they're directly supervising personnel. Even though their title is supervisor, they actively work at taking 911s and dispatcher.
Yeah. That's even my.
They meet the definition.
My manager still work at radio too, so they're supervising, but my manager, they're all.
The supervisors who directly supervise PCERS, PCERS members that are performing those job specific duties. If they're supervising somebody who supervises them, no.
But right, but the clarification is that, so I have my telecommunicators,
Mhm.
I have my first level supervisors who supervise them, but also we're predominantly as radio operators because we're small and we don't have choices. So they're dispatchers, they're
Okay.
just supervisors.
Yeah,
I supervise my supervisors who are actually dispatchers, they're just.
well, then you go.
So
yeah.
that, I just want to make sure that we understand that definition is pretty specific, but in each of our individual circumstances, there's variations that we need
The
to give.
title doesn't necessarily clarify that.
Right.
It's the actual job responsibilities,
And we try to avoid that in the language, the title piece, because it's so different across.
right?
Who makes that recommendation? And does that get submitted to PRS?
Well, it's not stipulated in law when the bill that passes, and we have to kind of, that's part of what our project team does, is they have to go in and come up with some definitions and then put them into wax and stuff. That's typically how that works. I couldn't tell you specifically if this came out of the law or something that came out as the project team, but I know that's the definition, so. But I believe it did come from the law. I think the specific wording, I think did come from the law. Did my projector time out? Times I know.
I'll come back.
Oh, okay. All right, let's go through a couple of examples of dual membership, because it's gonna impact a majority of people here, so. But majority of PSERS members. So our first example, again, PSERS and PERS dual member. Keeping in mind that the plan rules of each plan will determine eligibility, which is part of why I kind of went through all that. And they're going to, when they do retire, they're going to apply for retirement twice and receive a separate payment from each system. Okay. So in our example here, we've got this member who is 60 years old and has achieved 15 years in PERS 2 and 5 years in PSERS 2 for a total of 20 years, right? Where am I going with this one, do you think? After 20 years in. So as a reminder, eligibility is PERS 2 has an eligibility of full benefit at 65 with 5 years, early retirement 55 with 20 years, PSERS full benefit 60 with 10 years, reduced benefit 53 with 20 years. So this person has met the early retirement requirements for a PERS 2 benefit at age 60. And of course, an early retirement, but a full retirement for a benefit at age 60 as well. And why is that? Because they have less than 10 years in PSERS, right? Because in total, because the total is 20 years, they're eligible for their full PSERS benefit at age 60.
So does that mean because you said they have to put in for retirement twice, does that mean they can only put in for their PSERS, but not their PERS?
So that's the decision here. This person would have the choice at age 60. They would have the choice to retire early from PERS 2 with a reduced benefit with that 20 years in. Remember that those reduction factors, less than 30 years, actuarially reduced. Or they could separate from service at age 60, apply for their PERS benefits, and postpone and apply for this when they turn 65 to get their full benefit amount, which is what they did. That was the choice made here. So this person went ahead and applied for retirement at age 60. Now, as far as the calculation of the benefit is concerned, we're looking at PERS here. The other benefit of being a dual member is whichever system they earn their highest average pay in, both of them are going to use that number when we calculate that pension benefit. So in our example here, this person had their monthly average, AFC, average final compensation monthly average, in PSERS was $6,000, in PERS was $4,000. Because the PSERS average pay was higher than the PERS, we're going to use PSERS for both calculations. So this person's got I'm sorry, this is a PSERS example. This person's got PSERS of 5 years using the average pay in PSERS. So 2 times 5 is 10%. 10% of 6,000 is $600. If this person retires at 60, they would start at 60 with a $600 monthly benefit for life. Yeah, so it's based on the years worked and earned in PSERS. Now this person, again, they're going to postpone their PERS retirement until age 65. And so at age 65, going to take that 15 years of service credit earned in PERS times the 2% times the average final compensation earned in PSERS. Everybody with me on that? And that gets to a benefit of $1,800 per month. So in summary, this person would get a full benefit at age 60 of $600, a full benefit at age 65 of $1,800, and of course, beginning at age 65, adding them together, would receive a $2,400 per month benefit. They're going to come with separate payments every month, but in total, this person would have $2,400 every month for life.
So are those separate payments paid on that same day?
Yes. Yeah, so all benefit payments come out the last business day of each month. So I don't know it's really gonna matter. They're gonna, like most people do direct deposits, all gonna kind of go in there anyway, but just so you know, you have to apply, they'll have to apply for retirement twice and then have the 2 separate payments every month, so.
The question I have is, on the website, I'm not seeing it yet, but I may not be looking in the right place, but will there be for those of us that have been in PERS for a long time, and now we have this opportunity potentially, because maybe I can retire a little earlier than I expected, to calculate at what point, like, where the money makes sense, right? So where does the benefit actually make sense? Does it make sense for me to transfer to PCERS regardless of the retirement age? How does that change my retirement fund? I mean, I know that I gotta put in numbers, sometimes I have to make them up, but to calculate that, because I gotta make a decision and I gotta make it the next few months. So which way am I gonna jump? And I don't wanna do it blind.
Well, I guess it's just kind of coming down to understanding eligibility. And if you feel that whatever time you have in PCERS, the dollar amount at age 60 would benefit you to leave earlier, or if you want to work all the way to 65 and then then the benefit amount's going to be the same, whether it would be PCERS or PERS if you work to 65. So it really kind of comes down to the dollar amount and what you can comfortably live on, or would have to keep working and get a higher benefit amount later.
So I guess to kind of touch to that, if I just stayed in PERS, now instead of stopping at a certain point, it carries on, so my benefit increases because I'm getting more, as opposed to stopping and going into PCERS and starting to build that up, like determining the math between those two, because there's gonna be a difference between those last 5 years or 7 years of service. If I stay in PERS or move into PCERS, there's gonna be, at the end of the day, a difference in how much money I'm taking home when I retire at a specific age.
Well, not necessarily, because keep in mind that, well, unless you, it depends upon where you're earning your highest salary in, whether it's PERS or PCERS. So if you're gonna be in the same position, but you stay in PERS, your salary is gonna be the same, whether you're in PERS or PCERS. That's not gonna impact your average pay calculation.
Right, I'm just talking about the payout at the end.
Right, and so am I.
Right, oh, okay, so. 'Cause I'm
The
talking about
2% times your service credit year is gonna earn the same amount of credit in both. Your average pay is gonna be the same in both. That's what I'm saying, the dollar amount is not going to matter. Really what it comes down to is eligibility, not how your benefit is calculated. So it's just deciding, are you gonna receive enough at age 60 to justify PCERS? Or you can plan on working all the way to 65 anyway, because you're not gonna have enough time in PCERS to really justify that. Those are things that you would want to look at.
And there's a way to calculate that on the website, under the benefit calculator.
Well, so here's the challenging part too. There is a benefit estimator that if you're not in PCERS, if you're only in PERS, works really well. Once you become a dual member, they don't talk to each other online. So you can't do this, which system is going to have the highest average pay. They're not going to know that. They don't talk to each other online. You're just going to have to kind of know what that is. Maybe plug the numbers in yourself. I've actually gone online with people as dual members, and I've said, okay, let's look into and it'll show like PERS. I've done PERS and LEP and PERS and PCERS, LEP and PCERS. But anyway, I've said, well, let's look at your time in PCERS. Let's look at your time in LEP. Which one you earned your highest average pay in? And then we just calculate, because that's going to be using both of them. So I get the numbers, I pull them from each one, but then I have to manually enter them into the formula. So 2% times that average pay times your service credit years, this is going to be your benefit. So you kind of have to know how this sort of works, because again, doing the benefit estimator online, it might work in one system, but not necessarily work in the other one because they don't talk to each other.
So not to eat up all your time here, but there's resources within DRS that I could actually call and give them all of the information that I have specific to my use case and talk about.
Yeah,
Just
they're going.
I know, it is fun.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna do the same thing as what I just talked to you about. They're just gonna go online, pull the numbers from your, to come up with some estimates for you. So yeah, it's just kind of understanding how that works and then deciding what works, but. Let me kind of keep going here and then I'll come back for some more questions, so. Okay, so now I showed you this person retiring at full retirement age for PCERS and PERS, but just as an example, If this person decided to retire at age 60 in both plans, they did it in both plans, remember the PERS benefit would be reduced, actuarially reduced. So the benefit would still be $600 in PSERS, but the reduced benefit in PERS would be the $1,132. But they would get both of these amounts, you know, $1,732 for the rest of their life. So then part of what you might want to look at is, that is 5 years of payments. That's 5 years of payments. Maybe take that 1,732, multiply it by 60, to kind of get to that dollar amount. Maybe come up with a break even. How long would you have to live before it makes sense whether you want to retire at 60 versus 65? But that's just things you can kind of look at to help you make that decision. So.
Excuse me.
Yes.
How did you calculate the reduced benefit? It was like 5% or something, or 3% with 20 years.
So this person has less than 30 years. So it's less than 30, so it's got 20 years. So it's actuarially reduced. Remember all those actuarial factors I showed?
Right.
I don't remember what it was for age 60, but I just applied
Okay.
that number to it, so.
5%. So you take, so you calculate it
Mhm.
like you were full, and then you take a percentage of that number.
Exactly, you got it,
Okay.
yeah.
So that actuarial reduction gets updated from time to time based on longevity.
Yeah, so occasionally those actuarial factors get updated to reflect plan costs, so they do change occasionally. But once you retire, then you're locked in. It doesn't change once you're retired, but it could change before you retire. Yeah. So that was one dual membership example. Let me take you through another one here. This is so much fun. So again, member retires at age 60. This example, this person's got 3 years in PERS 2, 17 years in PSERS for a total of 20 years of service credit. So again, plan rules determine eligibility, receive a payment from each system. And as a reminder, PERS 2's got the full benefit 65, 5 years, reduced benefit 55, 20 years. So in this example, this person has, you know, they're eligible for a reduced benefit at age 60. Got 20 years in total. But because they have more than 10 years, and of course, a total of 20 years, either way works, also eligible for a full benefit at age 60 in PSERS. This person is going to retire at age 60 in PSERS and then postpone retirement in PERS for the 3 years until they turn 65. So and then of course, the highest average pay is 6,000 in PSERS. So we take that 2% times 17 years in PSERS times the $6,000 average pay, get to a 2,040 benefit at age 60 for life. And at age 65, we got the 2% times 3 years, so 6% of $6,360 applies for that at age 65, gets that full benefit for life. So added together, $60, $2,040, and when they turn 65, then becomes $2,400, receive the separate payments each month. Hopefully I didn't go through that too fast. And again, as an example, if this person was to retire with both benefits at age 60, at age 60, because in total, let me kind of go back to here, they did achieve 20 years. So again, they are eligible for an early retirement in PERS, even though only 3 years have been earned in PERS, but they're eligible in total, right, for an early retirement in PERS. You can see why our retirement specialists are so busy. Can you imagine all the systems? We have 8 systems, 15 different plans. Can you imagine how complicated dual membership gets? Which is why I try not to say too much, yeah, call us anytime, because they get so busy with these kinds of things and nearing retirement and stuff, but this is kind of a way to do that. Anyway, so yeah, so this person could retire, again, full benefit 60, 65, full benefit PERS, or could retire early in PERS, get its full benefit of 2,040 and a reduced benefit of 227 for a total benefit of 2,267. That would be the other choice. No, but it all applies the same. To get 30 years.
I'm just curious because, with hers, I'm 24 years, I only have 6 years left on it first. To be eligible for the 30 years. So I'm curious if it's gonna be a different calculation.
In total, you have 30 years in total between PERS and PSERS. Is that the question?
Well, because with hers,
So let's say you had your 24 years in PERS. Let's say you had 6 years in PSERS. You get you 30 years in here. You could retire with an unreduced benefit in PERS at age 6. Oh, well, it would be reduced at age 60 because it's a 3% reduction under the age of 62.
But it was a different reduction if you've been there for 30 years.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
But 62 is where that starts. It's reduced under the age of 62. But age 60, because we're talking about 60 here, at age 60, your benefit would be reduced, or you could wait until 62 and get your full benefit in PERS. Because it would total 30 years.
Or I could stay with hers and get to my 30 years.
That's the question. Yeah. So in your situation, I don't know if PSERS makes a lot of sense.
I wanted to.
Still have to wait till 62.
Well, I think the benefit might be that for those 6 years, you're putting into PSERS and you retire at 60, you don't have an early retirement reduction.
I mean, you could leave at 60 and get that 6 years in PSERS benefit. Wait till 62 to get a full benefit in PERS. Or just get a reduced benefit in PERS, even though it's less of a reduction. You got your 30 years in, still reduced to 60. Those are your choices. So, yeah. It's not really possible to come up with all the scenarios that all different people can fall into.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough hours in the day to come up with that, but that'd be kind of a general idea of how to look at that. Yes,
I
sir.
have kind of a silly question.
Oh, hold on just a second. We got a virtual question here. Yes.
Hi.
Ashley, go ahead. Hi.
So my silly question for the day is, if I were to stay and retire at 60, I would have 35 years in for both. I'm sure you've already covered it, but does that make much of a difference? Sorry, I've been dealing with a baby.
Again, 35 years in, think of the normal benefit calculation, 2 times 35, 70% of your average pay. And then the amount of time that you have in PERS, if you retired at 60, that benefit amount would be reduced. You would get a full benefit from PSERS at 60, but your PERS benefit would be reduced.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
PSERS.
I said 18 years. They've done 18 years in PERS. In 2 years or 1 year will be in PSERS. Does that matter how many years they have in PSERS? So for example, if someone's 19 years right now in PERS and they go 1 more year in PSERS when they start over in July, but then they turn 60 next year, does that matter on how?
So for the most part, once you're vested in one plan, you're vested in all plans. Even if it's just 1 year in one plan and 19 years in another, because you became vested in the 19-year plan, you only need 5 years or maybe 20 for early retirement, but that just makes you vested in both plans. So really what it comes down to is understanding that the benefit amount you receive is based on the time you have in that plan. You could retire at 60 with 19 years, say in PERS, but your benefit would be reduced, actuarially reduced. You only have 1 year in PSERS, so 1 times 2% of your average pay would be a very small benefit amount, but that would be an option to retire and get that full benefit amount at 60. Well, they have to have a total of 30 years for an unreduced benefit, Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. So if somebody has 30 years, I mean, if you get a total of 30 years between the two, maybe that would be a way to look at it. You could work until 62 and then retire from both because you already made the 60 requirement for PSERS. So you get your full benefit in PSERS and PERS at age 62. If you did all your time in PERS, it would all be full benefit anyway. So you might as well just stay in PERS if that's the plan. And you're eligible for that. There you go. Yeah, you can certainly do that. You bet. If you just don't want to do the job anymore and you want to go do something else and just take that PERS benefit and then wait till 65 for the PERS benefit. Yeah, good way to look at that. Yes.
Does the cost of living increase applied every year after?
Yeah, so all PERS and PERS are eligible for an automatic COLA.
So is that COLA or a COLA applied to your average final compensation during 5 years? Okay.
No, it's applied to your base benefit amount and then it accumulates for every COLA every year. So
Just based on that, your calculations that you're showing us for the choice between taking everything at 64 or deferring part of it until 65 or not. The full picture, because you're losing the potential cost of inflation.
yeah, but that's true. That would be one, you can look at that way, because your average pay is not going to go up. Unless, okay, here's another example. If you're in PERS Plan 3, PERS Plan 3 has what's called benefit indexing. If you achieve 20 years or more in Plan 3, you leave your job, maybe you're going to retire from PERS, but wait till 65 for PERS 3, your benefit amount is going to go up about 3% every year to keep up with inflation. PERS 2 does not have benefit indexing, but Plan 3 does. So there's an exception to that question. Yeah. But all 20 years do have to be earned in Plan 3. It can't be a combination of PERS and PERS for benefit indexing. So again, as a reminder, if any of my examples, if the person was in Plan 3, we would have used a 1% factor versus a 2% factor, just as a reminder. Few more FAQs here. So if an employee elects to transfer to PERS during the 2024 election period, how are we doing on time? During the election period, will they remain in PERS as long as they remain employed with their current employer? And I think this question came up earlier. So yes, as long as the employee is working in a PERS eligible position with their current employer, they will remain in PERS. However, if they move to a new position that is not PERS eligible, the employee will be mandated into retirement system for that new system or that plan. So if, kind of going back to, I think the question that came up earlier, if you establish membership in PERS and maybe you promote into a position that's normally PERS eligible, you're going to go into a PERS position. You're not going to stay in PERS. It's kind of the opposite of what the question came up through earlier, but anyway, yeah.
Basically, you would be able to
Yeah, because then you always have that PERS time, but you'll just go into a PERS. If you're promoted to a PERS eligible position, you're going to go into PERS. Yeah.
Do times accumulate then? If, say, I started obviously in PERS and then I switched to PERS and then I go back to a position that's now PERS.
It just means one becomes active and one becomes inactive. You're still going to have the same time and whatever you earn in those. No. No. You're still a dual member, even though you've kind of gone back and forth between the two. So we have certain agencies like Department of Corrections that go through this kind of thing all the time. There's just like, yeah, those kind of situations can get somewhat complicated, but still, yeah, it's still going to be, you're not going to lose any time for doing that. Once you're vested in one, you're invested in all. So as far as PSERS, yeah. I haven't heard that with LEF, and I'll have to check into that, but I know that's how it is for PSERS.
And maybe you didn't know.
Maybe there was some miscommunication, I don't know, but yeah. If you're vested in one, you're vested in both, so you could retire early in one and maybe postpone the other. I don't think, maybe I don't know. I doubt very many people do that because usually the benefit's so small, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So we probably don't get that question very much. I don't know, but. I guess I'd have to see the numbers. I don't know. Yeah, I hear the conversation. I don't know, so, yeah. If an employee leaves a PSERS position, so they leave their PSERS position, so they leave the employer and they return to their employer in a PERS eligible position, which plan will they be in? Yep. To me, that's pretty easy. They'd be in PERS.
You get a choice then of going to 2 or 3 in PERS, or you have to take the one that you were in before.
Once you're in a PERS plan, you're always that PERS plan. You can't, well. Guess where my next exception comes from. This feels like there's exceptions to every rule. Generally, once you're in a plan, it's your lifetime plan. The exception is, if you establish membership in PERS 2 prior to when we even had a Plan 3, because Plan 3 came out back in 2000, I'm going to say 2001, I think. Yeah, I think that's what. Anyway, so if you establish membership before that time in PERS 2, there is what we call the January transfer window. Anyone who did that can transfer to Plan 3 in January of each year. So if you're hired into it, you can make the decision at that time unless you were hired in January. But in January, those folks can transfer to Plan 3, but that's the only exception to that. Yes. No. Yeah. Outside of that, though, whatever your plan is, it is your lifetime plan. So.
Just clarify for like new employees that have been there, let's say a year right now, and they opt to go into PSERS. They didn't get vested in Plan 2.
Right.
Do they lose that year of service, or does that stay there until age 65 essentially, and they can do something with it?
So again, once you're vested in one plan, you're vested in all plans. So if they become vested in PSERS, they're automatically going to be vested in PERS. You wouldn't be vested with 1 year until you get your 5 years in PSERS. That makes you vested in PERS. Or even just 4 years added together gives you 5 years. You're vested now in both. Yeah. Yeah, if you think about it, the good thing about, even though dual membership, multiple plans can get complicated, the ultimate goal is, the ultimate benefit of being a dual member is when you do start receiving your monthly benefit, the dollar amount that you receive each month should be the same as if it all came from one system. Now, of course, eligibility is going to be different, but once you start drawing benefits from both systems, the total dollar amount that you receive should be the same as if they came from one system. So that's kind of that's really the understanding, the best understanding to get of dual membership. That's the goal. That's where you use the average pay, whichever one is higher, both use that number. Once you're vested in one, you're vested in both. Both of them apply service credit to vesting. So the ultimate goal is to get the same dollar amount as if it came from one plan, even though they're going to apply for retirement twice, get 2 separate payments, but yeah. Yeah, or 10 years. You get, if all 10 years are earned in PSERS, it's full benefit at 60. But if it's a combination to 20, then it's full benefit in PSERS. And like in her example, she doesn't want to keep working in the same job, wants to go do something else. Maybe just having that little extra money or whatever each month to wait to 65 for PERS and maybe go do something else. That might be a reason if someone wants just to have that extra at age 60. But yeah, generally, again, the formula is the same for both, so, yeah. Sure. Yeah.
The only reason you're retiring is that I'll already have been retired, so you're fine. So I guess.
But that's why I kind of also pointed out that, remember, the benefit of a pension is, and what determines your benefit amount? Well, it's really good to have that option to be able to retire early. Also keep in mind that what determines your benefit amount is your years of service. The longer you work, the higher your benefit's going to be. So just keep it in that. It's great to be able to retire early, but you want to make sure you can afford to retire early. You can afford things like healthcare and that kind of thing. If you have plans for another job or whatever where healthcare is taken care of, that's great. But you have to kind of look at the big picture and then help you decide what makes best sense for you. Yeah.
So I think you sort of clarified what I didn't understand is that multiplier provided you your years and the multiplier is the same in PERS and PSER. So
That's why I'm saying the benefit calculation is the same for both.
that makes the math a little easier. I was
Yeah.
being way overcomplicating it.
Yeah.
But I think the benefit for like someone in my position, if I qualify for PSERS, is then I could retire at 60 from PSERS and get a little bit of money, but go work in a different career and
Yeah.
make billions of dollars, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And then at 65, retire with my
With your
full
PERS, yeah.
retirement from the whole system
Yeah.
and be sitting pretty, but that's so for, I guess for me, going to PSERS in this, like, while we have the opportunity, it just gives me that window. Otherwise that window is closed.
Right.
I don't get that choice.
Right. Unless you change employers or that kind of thing, but yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Restrictions, if you retire, it should take your money, restrictions on where you work.
About where you can work.
So, yeah,
Yeah, what you're talking about is the return to work rules. If you go back to work for like a public employer in the state of Washington, you can go work in the private sector, you can work in another state or whatever, and not impact your benefit.
you can go into the same field that I've been working in for 12 or 30 years, but retired.
Yeah, if you go to work for a PERS eligible employer, then there's return to work restrictions you have to be aware of. So, yeah. PSERS eligible employer, either one. All right, so let's see what else here. Can a PERS plan 2 or 3 member who meets the eligibility requirements ask for a retroactive transfer? So we're past the window now. Now they're crunching the numbers and thinking, you know what, I probably should have gone into PSERS. Can I retroactively go back and do that? Nah, no. Big no. So yeah, it goes, again, you complete that transfer form based on the date of the form. It's a proactive decision. You can't retroactively go back and make that choice. So for anyone that has like to learn more about PERS, like to learn more about PSERS, or learn more about being a member of multiple plans, you can find all that information from our website, from your plan guide. A lot of great information there. Let's see what else. So we have recorded videos on our webinar page. We have live webinars we do covering PERS and PSERS. So dual membership. So lots of resources available to you.
Is this PowerPoint presentation like what you did available online?
Not currently, because we're still waiting for that election form to finish up. But my understanding is that they are going to do a recording of it. So at some point it should be available. Yeah.
Like soon?
Well, as soon as that form comes out, he gets it recorded. I hope so.
Okay, so it wasn't, you're just buying it. I wasn't sure if that's, it means you're qualified, you're good.
Yeah, it's not, if you're using the benefit estimator and it's applying that, you're eligible for it. It's not going to do it unless you're eligible. So yeah, you're welcome.
I'm in mine right now and I have access to the PERS 2 and all the calculators. How do I get to, does that just go to the homepage to get to the other plans to look at the rules and all of them?
Yeah, you don't have to be in your account to get to here. This is the main website. Everybody has access to it. So you should have an option. Even if you just click on probably the easiest way that I do is I just click on the DRF. Takes me right into the main website. So yeah. Any other questions?
Any more questions for Stacy? Okay, thank you. No, really.
Great.
Question?
Thank you.
That's not like your big. Yeah, no, it's they, whatever your paycheck, and then it's that total before they take everything out. Overtime. And it's not really like. You get extra pay for being a female.
Employees and officers, the Spokane Employee Retirement System. They said that that was a dual ownership with PERS, that they merged the PERS and CERS. Is that correct? Because I've not been able to find anything on the actual website. Spokane Employee Retirement Systems for the state employee retirement.
And not doing.
Yes.
So, yeah, that was kind of complicated because there was CERS versus what
I need that. So I need to figure out, the ASP, the average.
That's because,
I don't know how to figure that out.
it came at the same time that, or around the same time when CERS members had a chance, was PERS, but they had a chance to become Plan 3 members. When they rolled Plan 3 out, we kind of developed a new system.
Yeah.
That CERS.
I need to get into. I have.
So anyone who did PERS, yeah, they could use Plan 3.
It's not the school employee. How many years you have in the state Spokane employer?
Right.
Oh, you're talking about, yeah, I don't know much about their system. They
keep telling me that it's, because I have it too. I've had 10 years in that, and now I'm at PERS in my new job, but we have.
How to figure out that average
Consolidated
compensation.
center. They reopened it so that they could stay.
But it consolidated, that also qualifies for dual membership benefits. I just don't see that side because that's not a system. But anyone who's part of this Spokane, City of Spokane's plan and State of Washington PERS
Very
retirement,
dramatic.
when you contact us to request your official estimate, which is when you're. We're going to be looking at benefits. Before then.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Glad he gave you this training.
That's what, it's a $50, and you to choose between Amazon, Home Depot, or House News.
Ooh. You go, let's go.
And it's Nancy Benenson. Nancy.
And now we can be adjourned.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
What if I don't want a pension? What's the calculation for a cat?
So your account balance, the plan summary, you'll get that.
Okay.
Get the employer contributions.
Only my contributions.
So what I would recommend is do a break-even analysis. The average person exhausted account balance about 3 to 5 years. You get a pension benefits for the rest of your life. It's not a lot of these pension.
She said.
See,
I know.
do the numbers.
Yeah.
The numbers are super true.
All right.
Like, what I always thought. Supervising. So, that is the big one. How does your,
Evaluated for this umbrella. So then we did work, we thought we did it for the first time. That's good enough. That's how we did it.
I have one question.
So that's something that probably comes on, or just if somebody wants to.
I think the answer is just.
So. It's gonna be 4 3. Then he moves over to serves. And I didn't have. But no matter what you do, but again. Originally, I thought but basically, if we get a plug service to come home, I gotta go till I'm 60. That's right. The other one, if we have 60.
Yeah, as long as you've got a total of 30 years between both, then 62 would be based on your 5 years in PERS. That's what you want.
I'm gonna have at least 32 years in. 60 years old. I'll have 34 in. Want to do 30. 30, you call it difference. But nothing changed. Unless you're taking, okay.
What's the reducement?
And it's too big of a cut. Thank you for your help.
Thank you. The question on that. So I'm familiar with that first, with the piece survey, I think I just.
That was a 3% reduction for every year, then 100.
So it is more than.
For the, yeah, well, not, well,
I have.
it's actually less if you have less than 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But they're.
if you have 35 years, okay, then with PERS, it would be, for the most part, it's a 3% reduction under the age of 62. So that's, that would be.
Switching.
It's hard for me to really do that, make that much to know.
Thank you.
I just looked. Otherwise, I'm not saying. That's kind of stuff. So it's either way. Back in frost, there's a little bit. I mean, like, you could one person room that in there. You already can always say, you already. I should read the rest of
Yeah, absolutely. But that's wonderful, because we do. So I have not. So we have to.
So that's the history with. That's surprising. Like, that's not okay. We can figure out what's best for each other. That's what it's been, which is why I say. That you're not their way, not intended, but not.
Yes.
Great. I'm still like. Where does he change your? I spent 2 years chasing after that.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing. We're finalizing. So I'm hoping that maybe I'll get some like last minute.
If you take something else away, take that away. There's something to look at. Wait, you were. Yeah.
Be myself and I, that makes three. And then you tell me, that's it. Exactly.
Further down the start. But my kind of wrote the same thing, not quite next time, but I'm working on it, so we're doing a collaboration also.
But everyone's like, right.
Right. I'm sorry. Well, if you do the press, you should try, you got to try it first. It's everyone who's so far. I try and agree. That's why the system that we built already. That's why we can work on money and time shooter. But I agree with you. If you, there's not to be mistaken this time. You still not do that. It really does. I think it's worth it for some place in your center. Phone first and find out what they have. The fees are best. You turn it on. Whatever. I think there's a place there. I'll work on that. Yeah. Yeah, but I appreciate the feedback. Maybe not your presentation.